Coming up on this episode of One-on-One Sports.
The NFL is finally back in action. Wrestling is already back in the Olympics, and Rafael Nadal is back in the winner's circle at the U.S. Open.
Plus, we have controversies on the racetrack and on the gridiron, and a college basketball coach telling his fans to run and hide.
All that and more, and it all starts right now. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of One-on-One Sports. I'm Ryan Ballack.
And I'm Jake Soder. We've got a great show for you today, but let's kick things off with the starting five.
Week 1 in the NFL is now officially in the books, but not without a few upsets and multiple injuries. Jake, what are some impressions you have from Week 1?
Well, first of all, even more so than before, it's still an all quarterback-driven league. We saw the usual suspects perform: Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning at a very high level.
Your boy Tom Brady wasn't too bad.
Yeah, he wasn't too bad. We also saw some new guys perform, though. Terrell Pryor, you got your E.J. Manuels and Geno Smiths, who performed well enough to lead their teams to victories or almost victories in the case of E.J. Manuel. So it's definitely still a quarterback-driven league. That's what I took away from it.
I totally agree with you on the quarterback-driven lead, and these two teams were dominated by their quarterback play. The Denver Broncos and the San Francisco 49ers really stuck out to me. These teams look like elite teams. The Denver Broncos ran over the Baltimore Ravens. Peyton Manning had his will. After that first quarter, he was held scoreless, and then he just went off, completely dominating. Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers did a really good job handling the Packers. Packers brought it. Jordy Nelson was playing well. Aaron Rodgers played well, and the 49ers won in pretty good fashion.
It's pretty scary if those two teams can do what they did to those two teams they played, the Ravens and the Packers. Pretty scary what they'll be able to do against the rest of the league. Former longtime Chicago Bears linebacker BrianUrlacher, who now works as a broadcaster after hanging up his cleats, has admitted that the Bears designated a dive guy on defense who would fake an injury if necessary in order to slow down the opposing team's offense. This has been a prevalent issue in the NFL and in college lately, including one more accusation in Week 1. How bad of an offense to the game is this, Ryan?
This is pretty bad. I mean, it just makes me sad as a fan of football that this goes on, but honestly, I'm not surprised. With the fast play, the quarterback play, the whole league has changed. I mean, we got all these fast quarterbacks, as we mentioned in the previous block. I mean, now E.J. Manuel, like Robert Griffin, Colin Kaepernick, Russell Wilson, all these guys run.
But you know what? Then draft faster players. It makes a farce out of the game.
Guys they're big guys. They can't keep up with these little guys.
The fact of the matter is, it has gone on forever, and we know that. So the fact that someone's coming out and saying it now, yeah, you know. But my point is just like, if you can't stop it, draft people who can. Don't complain and don't fake injuries to stop the play. Draft faster people. That's all there is to it.
I mean, yes, but he's just BrianUrlacher saying, I'm sure some of the good players actually do this.
And is anybody surprised that this happens? Nobody. Nobody's surprised.
It's really a shame. This weekend was a busy one for the International Olympic Committee. After choosing Tokyo to host the 2020 Summer Olympic Games, the IOC voted to reinstate wrestling 7 months after it was controversially taken out of the games by the same committee, beating out baseball, softball, and squash. Jake, did the committee make the right call bringing back wrestling?
100% yes, they did make the right call. It was a bad decision to take wrestling out of it to begin with. There are some countries out there who only send people to the Olympics
for wrestling.
Yep. So that would eliminate them from contention of future Olympics for the foreseeable future. But now they reinstated wrestling, those countries can start competing again, and it's a great thing for the Olympics.
Also, wrestling is an original Olympic sport. I mean, this has existed since 700 BC. How could you get rid of a sport like wrestling, especially for baseball in the middle of the season? Softball, who cares about softball? And squash, give me a break.
Very happy wrestling is back. Mariano Rivera is on his last tour of Major League Baseball, and some teams are even honoring him with his last trip to their home stadiums before he retires. Baseball has come to terms with a league without Mo, but his current manager is not. Despite the fact that Rivera has announced his retirement, Joe Girardi is still not ready to let go, saying that he will talk to Mo at some point in the offseason about his decision. Ryan, is there any chance Girardi convinces Mo to come back for another season?
I think there is a chance, sadly, because I think the Yankees are really not having that great of a year. They're probably 10 games out of first place right now, and maybe Mo doesn't want to go out like this. But I think if Joe Girardi goes ahead and asks Mariano Rivera to come back, that's pretty embarrassing by Joe Girardi after all the things that the MLB has done for Mariano Rivera this year.
Pretty embarrassing, and I'm going to go ahead and say there is zero chance that Mariano Rivera comes back for another season. If you go through an entire season of people giving you standing ovations in stadiums that aren't your own, teams making offerings to you as gifts, you can't come back for another season after that. You just can't do it.
Tampa Bay built a sand creature of Mariano Rivera. Like, come on, how are you going to come back after that?
After a season like that, you can't come back and do it all again.
Especially if the All-Star game went this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a perfect way to send him off.
If you don't follow football too closely, you'd probably assume that Jadeveon Clowney is already in the NFL. That's how often his elite skill is talked about. However, he is still in school at South Carolina, not yet a pro athlete. Clowney is the headline every time South Carolina is mentioned, and so far this season, the stories have been about what Clowney only did, always seemingly not up to the superhuman expectations. Jake, is the media putting too much pressure on the Clowney hype?
Well, I'll tell you this much. He did not show up at all in that first game against UNC, and he was rightly blasted for it. He should have showed up in that game.
That's true, especially versus UNC and ACC. I expect them to
Right.
do that.
If this continues throughout the entire season, sure, the media can put more hype on him. But no, I mean, that was more pressure. That was only one game. So to say that he's not only living up to these superhuman expectations, let the guy play out an entire season before you make these sort of judgments about him. He's still one of the elite players, if not the elite player in college football.
He is certainly a special talent, but I don't think the media is putting too much pressure on him. I mean, this is reality. I mean, Cam Newton got destroyed by the media. Johnny Manziel is getting destroyed by the media. Clowney is really not getting it that much. He's just getting praise for how good he is and for that hit, and just won't get off the SportsCenter top 10. So, I mean, everybody just expects him to do that every single time he hits somebody.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Ridiculous.
If Johnny Manziel and Cam Newton could withstand what they went through and still come out on top, Jadeveon Clowney will be fine.
Exactly.
We have to take our first break, but stick around because up next, our NFL experts and I sit down in the lounge to discuss the top stories of Week 1.
And later, we had to call in our NASCAR expert to make some sense out of an eventful weekend leading up to the Sprint Cup.